Okay, so diving into the great dust storm of 2047 today. This story, man, it grabs you right from the first page. You've got this guy, right? He's recounting how he survived this absolutely massive dust storm. But get this, it's 2047, and Kansas, yeah, Kansas is a straight up desert wasteland.
Talk about a bleak picture. Huh?
Bleak is an understatement.
It's bleak, no doubt. But for me, it's fascinating from like a sociological standpoint. You've got over 100 people who decided to stick it out. They holed up in this old salt mine, Strataka, and turned it into the self-sufficient community. It really makes you think about the choices people make when things go sideways. What would you be willing to give up for a shot at survival? Like, what does it really mean to rebuild society when the whole world's gone haywire?
It's wild, right? They're 650 feet underground, but it's not like some post-apocalyptic nightmare fuel. Sprateka is surprisingly, well, livable. They've got power from wind turbines and solar panels on the surface.
Makes sense, right? Renewable energy and all that.
Exactly. But then there's this curveball, a gravity battery. I'm picturing like a giant grandfather clock. Am I way off here?
Not too far off, actually.
Yeah.
Imagine a system where they use excess energy to lift these huge weights. And when the wind dies down or the sun sets, those weights slowly come back down,
Yeah.
turning a generator.
Wow.
It's pretty ingenious when you think about it, taking this whole technology and making it work in this totally unexpected way.
Talk about human ingenuity. And it doesn't stop there. They've got this whole aquaponic system growing fish and plants together in a loop. Sounds crazy efficient, but
I know.
makes me wonder about the long term.
Absolutely. The story kind of skips over some of those practical questions, like what does limited sunlight do to you long term? Can a closed-loop system really be sustainable?
Big points.
It makes you appreciate the potential downsides of a controlled environment, even if it's keeping you alive.
For sure. And it can't all be sunshine and roses, even underground, right? The story mentions they ditched a capitalist system for bartering, which, I mean, makes sense, given the whole limited resources thing. And then there's this Harker guy, their leader.
Yes.
Basically a benevolent dictator situation, yeah. He bankrolled the whole operation, so he's got a lot of pull.
That's where things get really interesting. Easy to romanticize a self-sufficient community and all, but a benevolent dictator. Even in a crisis, it raises questions about power. How much choice is really there, even if it's for the so-called greater good.
Right. And that question of choice, it gets even bigger when this massive dust storm hits. That's the turning point in the story. I mean, dust storms are normal in this future Kansas, but this one's different. This is like next level.
It's like this massive wall of dust, thousands of feet high,
Yeah.
just wiping out the sun and the wind speeds. It's crazy, up to 105 miles an hour, like the worst possible dust storm you can imagine.
And then some, right?
Totally. And this is where Strataka, it all goes sideways. Their wind turbines, the main power source, they have to shut down too much wind. It's like a safety thing, built-in cutout speeds. But suddenly, it's all on their backup power, that gravity battery.
Talk about a lifeline, huh?
Seriously.
Mhm.
And it shows you how important it is to have backups redundancy, especially in a survival situation. Having multiple power sources, that's key. But even the best laid plans.
Can be pushed to the limit.
Exactly. And those limits, they get tested. Big time rations have to be enforced. Lights are dimmed. It's like all those comforts, all the things that made Strataka livable, they disappear overnight.
It's a whole different world down there now.
Right.
From self-sufficiency to just straight up survival mode.
And it's not just the physical stuff either, the lack of resources. It's the mental aspect too. Imagine that constant darkness, supplies dwindling, that uncertainty. It all weighs on you.
Breeds fear, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
It's a pressure cooker. And you see how strong their community really is, how they handle it.
The author does a great job of capturing that sense of dread, that feeling that things are going from bad to worse.
It's palpable, and it sets the stage for this classic trope.
Yep.
The one person with the knowledge to save everyone.
And in this case, it's Derek.
Derek, the deputy electrical engineer. Their only hope of getting those wind turbines back online. And to do that,
He has to go topside.
into that maelstrom, 132-degree heat. We're talking about the limits of human endurance here, even with protective gear.
It's like trying to survive on the surface of Venus or something. It's crazy. And the story doesn't shy away from the details. Derek's climb up that turbine 280 feet. Each foot is agony. And his cooling suit is struggling to keep up. Just brutal.
He's got the weight of the world on his shoulders, and time is running out.
If he doesn't get those turbines going, if that gravity battery dies,
It's all over.
and that's where we'll leave it for now, folks.
So he's up there hundreds of feet, baking in that insane heat.
Mm-hmm.
The fate of Strataka, right?
Mm-hmm.
All resting on this one guy.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
No kidding. All our ingenuity, our resilience, we think we've got it all figured out. But then the story throws this at you, this reminder of how vulnerable we are.
Totally. And he's got to dig deep to find the strength to keep going. He gets to that first turbine and
Mark on. Prost.
completely destroyed. But there's still that second turbine. He finds the problem. A fried circuit board. Probably all that dust. And he manages to replace it just in time. Someone down in Strataka was talking him through it.
Talk about a clutch move.
Seriously. But even with one turbine online, they're still only at, like, half power.
Bittersweet victory, if you ask me. They dodged a bullet, but at a cost. Makes you wonder what happens next. It's like they're living on borrowed time.
That's a question that sticks with you long after you finish the story. How do you rebuild when everything's constantly trying to knock you down?
It's more than a survival story. It's about resilience, adaptation, the human spirit facing down an uncertain future.
It's inspiring in a way. You know, even when things are at their worst, we find a way to learn, to innovate, to rebuild.
The ending, though, that's what really got me. It's not tied up in a neat little bow. It's real. Derek gets back to Strataka, forever changed by what he went through, and he pours everything he has into designing new turbines. Smaller, tougher, more resilient.
Not about going back to the way things were.
It's about moving forward, forging a new path.
So what's the takeaway here? If we had to boil it all down,
The great dust storm of 2047.
it's a story that stays with you. It's a reminder that the future, yeah, it's uncertain. But it's not something to be afraid of. It's something we can shape, something we can build.
It really gets you thinking, doesn't it? What would I do in that situation? What skills would matter most? And that's the beauty of a great story, right? It sparks our imaginations, makes us challenge our assumptions, leaves us with more questions than answers.
And a reason to keep exploring, keep asking those questions long after the story's over.